Hey, welcome to Wonder Without the Fear. Today we have Holly Marie, and we're going to be going deep into the emotional war that we're all dealing with. And she's going to give us some tips and some ideas and how we can transmute that going back into the past and revisiting the past without that trigger and dealing those with emotions so that it can be more into the present. How are you doing today, Holly?
I'm good. Thank you for having me back on, Chris.
Yeah,
It's
you're
really
very
good to be
welcome.
back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what have you been like? What's been going on lately? Like, there's so much to talk
Everything.
about, isn't there? Just in a few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, where do you even start? Literally, where do you even start? It's just eh, anything and everything is going on right now. And
Hmm.
what I kind of want to, or what I've been a little bit focused on lately is how we're being played on our sensitivities instead of unifying through our strengths.
Hmm.
And, as they always say, united we stand, divided we fall. And we're falling really fast and hard right now.
Hmm.
Um, Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, they're really trying to play all these. You're a bad person if you don't wear a mask. You're on the other side. It's just like, well, you're going to get sick if you wear a mask. And they're trying to make all these divides. They're doing the race war thing, and the fight against the police thing. They're trying to do everything that they can to divide us and to sanction that emotion, because if you get deep into this down the rabbit hole, they're using what people are aware of as loosh and all this negative energy to create their world government, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd like you to sort of talk about some of the things that you've been working with some of your clients with, so that we're not being trapped by these triggers and these emotional things that were always going on. And I know that's something that I'm always working with. I'm like, oh, I got triggered again. Okay, breathe, take a step back, and take it away, and let's talk about some of the things that how you've been helping people with those triggers.
Cool. Well, I really like how you use the word trapped, because what
Hmm.
it does is it keeps us into this double bind. So how I work with my clients is I take them back, whatever's triggering them in the present, I take them back to the root of that. And I use the chakra system, just to give people a little background. I use the chakra system when I'm with a person, or if I'm doing it remotely, to find where the energy in the body is stored. So if someone's coming in and they're like, I'm really having fear around, COVID, this virus, or I'm really, just having fear around the current situations, we'll narrow it down to identify it, but then it's like, well, we want to trace it back to where it's trapped in the body of this lifetime or a past lifetime. And I call it a frequency distortion.
Hmm.
And when we're running around with these frequency distortions, and we all have them, we all have them. And the frequency distortion is going to be where we're getting triggered with a current event. So for me, I remember in 7th or 8th grade, I stayed home from school sick because we were supposed to watch a movie in history about slavery. And I couldn't do it because
Hmm.
I couldn't do it. And I didn't know why, because obviously, I don't carry that ancestral wound. But we were going to watch, I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was about how they brought all the Africans over on the boat, and it just rocked me to my core. I stayed home sick that day, never saw the movie. And years later, literally like over 20 years later, I was watching a movie, and all of a sudden I just got this trigger download. And I remembered this past life. I write about it in my workbook, and I remembered this past life of when I was in the time of slavery and what happened. And so I was able to heal that piece and realize that it's the perpetrator we need to have compassion for over the victim, because it's the perpetrator that's in ignorance. So I was able to heal that piece, and then is what that does is it kind of lifts off the veil. So when this whole thing with George Floyd went down, it's like I wasn't in that hypnotic trigger zone being totally rocked by my emotions. It's like I could see clearly to what I was being shown and really be critical about it and move through it thinking like, hey, let's get all the facts here. This looks like a false flag. We come to find out, like, he's got hair, he's got no hair, like all these things come down. iPod, In Pursuit of Truth, did this amazing video called The Weatherman 3, I think, which goes all into the past. It gets really deeply embedded into Somalia property owners and everything with George Floyd. It's very convoluted. And so I was able to step back and critically look at this. And you never want anybody to suffer. It's not about that. There's suffering every single day. But for one incident to trigger something this big, there's more to it. There is more to it. And so then you can get in and clearly see where the race card's being played to start a race war, or where the communist card is being dealt to rewrite our history, and so forth. And so I would probably be out there protesting with Black Lives Matter, thinking I was doing the right thing. And yes, Black Lives do matter. And that was a great organization, just for the record, until it got infiltrated. But I'm not out there, and I healed that wound. So when I see other people, they're equals. There's not this distinction. They're equals, but I had to heal that wound. And when we all move past those trigger wounds, when we can literally heal them, not just identify them, but really understand them, that's when the perception of our reality changes, and we don't carry that frequency distortion anymore. So we're not getting triggered. And so there's still frequency distortions in our field that they're constantly trying to play off of. And those unhealed frequency distortions is the prime, that's how they trigger us to do predictive programming, to create loosh for the archons. That's where it all starts.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, just to reiterate it, it doesn't really matter these, yeah, it's interesting, like whether the Floyd thing was staged.
Sucker, I thought I killed it.
Bring in some humor. Good job. Transmute some of that.
Well, wait, the fly, actually, I don't mean to cut you off. The fly brings medicine. The fly represents the fly represents making light out of your dark, out of your shit. That's what the fly represents in the shamanic healing. So whatever's going bad, make something out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. True enough. Yeah, and I mean this is a great point. Is like how when we see some of these whether it's a reality or if it's some sort of falsehood, when we start to see some of these falsehoods happening, and we can see that higher level, when we get to that higher perspective of it, not to discredit the other layers of what's going on, but right. we're able to like really like are you serious? George Soros and all these other people like we've been like playing this game for so long that it's like it's so predictable that it's like, okay, of course it was going to be, if you were paying attention, of course it was going to be some sort of race war. Now they're trying to, bring back COVID, and now they're trying all of these things. And, some people that, I listen to, and probably some people that you listen to too, is like these like higher levels have been kind of already dismantled. And so you just have these like pieces continuously play out without really having like a actual soul puppetry, working with these different levels, right? And that's where it kind of becomes that, that humor kind of comes in. And you're just like, really, this is okay. What's next? Okay, I'm still waiting for those aliens to come in September or whatever it is.
Right. Well, I want to touch on the mask thing really quick.
Sure.
I have noticed people. It's like, okay, I feel like politics isn't even like the hot spot, right? It is, of course it is, but man, this COVID thing, this whole thing with the masks, I mean, people are really losing it over these masks. I have seen, I asked a simple question to somebody that I've known for over 20 years. I've known this person personally 20 years. And he said yesterday on Facebook that, 3 people came into his unit dead and 3 more tested positive, and he can't believe that people don't think this is real. So I responded and I said, well, what was their health condition? What was their health condition? What was their age range? And why aren't we giving hydroxychloroquine? Right?
Yeah.
Like, and it was like, bye, Holly. And I was like, well, no, wait a minute. I have a friend here in Oregon who's in her 60s who tested positive for COVID, and she's 100%. Like, I want to know what's going on. Why are these people dying? Or are they? Cut me, blocked me, unfriended me for asking a question. This is such a hot topic right now. And is what I'm realizing is that it's not about the mask. People are afraid of death. They have not come to peace with death. Right. And not only that, I feel like there's this massive wave of cognitive dissonance coming over, and people they're trying to hold on to that old construct, that old paradigm so hard, it's not even funny. And I mean, it's really becoming an issue right now. And most of us in the know who are studying this and know what's going on with the Chinese Communist Party and everything, we know what's coming if we don't stand up for our rights right now in the US, in Canada, around the globe. And I don't know if you've seen that picture from the Denver airport floating around on Facebook.
Yes.
It's got all the people, and they've got their masks, and it's got Brazil, Japan, all the different people, Africa, United States, Israel, Russia. Like, the globe is being masked right now.
Yeah.
And it's
I was trying to find that original picture. I couldn't, maybe I didn't search for it enough, but I couldn't necessarily find it. So it'd be really interesting if anybody's listening because I've seen it on Facebook, and I'm just like, okay. I was just searching because I've seen lots of the Denver airport artwork and such. And me personally, that's the first time I've ever remember seeing that picture. So I'd be curious if someone knows where the original picture is, or maybe that's something that was up a number of years ago and they replaced it with something else. I don't know. Have you seen? Even if
it was fake, just say it was fake. That's literally because when I was trapped in Peru, right? We had our masks on. That's literally what's happening.
Yeah.
And I was just listening to the Ultimate Roundtable that Laura Eisenhower just put out, and I love her work, and she made such a good point. This is literally all about our throat chakra. This, there's my fly. This is that expression. And it's all about the throat chakra right now. And we're literally being muzzled.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely the big thing is that's right on point, talking about like that's what the big part of it is so that, I mean, prior to this all happening around the world, there were protests happening, especially in Hong Kong and in China. There was huge amounts of protests. You know, Paris, the Yellow Jackets, whatever you think about those protests, that was happening. They were protesting over the union that was going on with their the metro and the transit system, and et cetera. And, you know, so all of these protests were happening, and it's like, what a better way to shut people up, figuratively and literally, by putting, you know, a mask, getting them to wear a mask, which, by the way, even the WHO and the CDC and like even mainstream doctors are telling you that this doesn't really protect you against the virus. And if you actually look at a virologist's laboratory and what they're geared up for and what they're wearing to protect themselves, I mean, it's a full-on biosuit, so that they're not getting, you know, they're not getting viruses. And to say that even an N95 mask is going to do something, I mean, if they were really serious about it, they would tell me to shave my beard so I have a proper seal around. If they're super serious, they would, you know, tell us that, you know, you have to wear an N95 mask. Here's how to wear it properly. Here's how to make sure, you know, you're not touching your face. If you are wearing gloves, make sure you're using you're sterilizing your hands before you take it off, your mask on and off. You have to get rid of that mask after you touch your face with it. So all of these things, they're not telling us proper procedures on how to wear a mask properly, if that was the case, that it actually worked to prevent you know, the spread of viruses, which we now know, again, according to the powers that be. I mean, other doctors that were muzzled through YouTube and Facebook and all other social medias that were telling us, hey, we don't wear masks to protect ourselves from getting viruses and stuff like that. We wear a mask to protect, you know, so we're not spitting on the patient, basically. So, I mean, these are the things that people need to understand is, you know, you know, doctors and such and nurses are wearing masks not to protect themselves, but to protect the patient. So I think that's a really important part. And yeah, it's literally, because if I'm talking to you right now, you can see my facial expression, you can see my mood, everything like that. And when you're not wearing a mask, it's like, I can't really tell. That communication is completely broken down. So.
Right. And well, that's the thing too. They're like, wear a mask to protect others. So now they're giving us guilt.
Yeah.
You know, so now I'm supposed to breathe in my CO2 because I'm not, because I'm supposed to protect everybody else, but I'm supposed to harm myself. No, It doesn't work that way. And I mean, what about, you know, the mystics, the people who know about energy, even quantum science? We know that your vibration or your mood boosts your immune system or tears your immune system down. So with all this fear that they're promoting, it's going to create people to get sicker and sicker and sicker because of the fear that they're holding. That literally produces more cortisol and other stress hormones. It fatigues your adrenal glands. It primes you for being sick. And when you're in an elevated mood, when you're not stressing out of these frequency distortions, you're going to be better. You're
Yeah.
going to have a higher vibration. And it sounds really woo-woo, but this can be proved in science. They're proving this in science now. Like poltergeist energy is really dense kinetic energy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, happy people don't have poltergeists. You know, they don't. I tried to get that fly, man. I thought I did.
It's your little mascot. It's fine.
I choose a different mascot. I was just going to sit on my head. And that's the other thing. Like, people aren't laughing enough right now. Like,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm happy. If someone is laughing over this fly, then they're boosting their immune system.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
and that's
there's tons of studies about that, right? Like, there's lots of testimonies about, you know, I mean, I forget the guy's name, but he was this particular person was, they came in and he didn't even know he was really that sick. He just kind of came in and he was like, yeah, I kind of, you know, I was feeling unwell for the last few weeks, and they did these tests and they're like, yeah, actually your body's like full of cancer. And so he went into a little bit of depression for a while, and he's like, you know what, he decided to go into like, for some reason he wanted to be recluse. He went into a hotel, he rented all these funny movies, and he literally laughed away the cancer. And they're just like, we don't understand. And so it's like, how did that happen? We don't have any explanation of what, you know, went on there.
well, okay, so he laughed away his cancer.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
When you're laughing, you can't laugh and be scared at the same time.
No.
And so it's like a state of hypnotism almost, right? So when you're laughing, if you're going to laugh away cancer, I mean, that's brilliant. Actually, you're not leaving there's no more allowance left for the cancer to occupy. There's no more allowance for it. So that's the other thing too, is what we're doing with the George Floyd thing, what we're doing with the COVID and the masks, is we are literally hypnotizing the public. The public is under mass hypnotism right now. And, you know, if you can go to a hypnotist to lose weight, or here's the big one, stop smoking, which is a chemical addiction.
Mm-hmm.
If you can hear words to do that, and then you have to look at women who create these false pregnancies where they literally start to lactate and they gain belly weight and they stop their cycle because they're convinced they're pregnant, then how are we being convinced that COVID is real, literally creating these symptoms within ourselves because we've read it over and over and over? We're literally programming ourselves to be sick. And when people were out there with their sign for George Floyd saying they can't breathe with their mask on, that is literally black magic.
Mm-hmm.
They are creating a spell on themselves. And is all anybody has to do is look up the declassified documents on the CIA, and you will see that they are creating a spell on themselves. They're making themselves sick, and they're making us sick because they're creating that consciousness. So they've got a personal responsibility. Like, they're literally harming my child. They're literally
and I mean,
harming people.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's really important that we, you know, we really, like, I mean, I own a TV, but like, I really just use it to connect to my computer, and I watch what I like I'm going to watch. And I mean, people were like, forget that in like the 50s and the 60s, there's Project what's it called? I'm losing my words. Mockingbird. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's a real thing. And they in those documents, it talks about using the media to lie to us and to tell, you know, to present fear and to present a certain point of view. And if you go even back further, to the days of, Hitler, they created the television as a propaganda device. So, and they knew, and I mean, if you go even deeper into the esoteric part of that particular science, then there's all these secret societies within the SS, et cetera, and they're, were, whether you believe it or not, they were looking into how to use frequency and the radio and television to create these ritualistic magic, so that they could hypnotize the humanity. Essentially, that was their end goal, and that was the reason, one of the main reasons, that the invention of the television, right? To television. Right. So, and yeah, I mean, I've spoken about this quite a few times on just my own little talks that I've done, and it's just a reminder. And I have to remind myself all the time. It's like all of these things, whether it's telling a vision, television, media, medium, Hollywood, from the Holly Tree, the wizards right. use that wand. Like, all of these things are all creating spells. Words, if you put S in front of words, it's swords. And because words are cutting, right? Like, all of these things, like, I could go on and on and on about how these are can be used in a positive or a negative way, depending on what your intention behind it. I think people should be aware of that. And once you bring your awareness to it, then it no longer, it's less likely to actually being able to, cause an effect, right? So I want to bring this back to a little bit back to some of your practices, so that so people can use some tools, some ideas, so that they're not affected by these triggers, right? So they're not affected by what they see on the television and the media. Well, first of all, let's just shut that off. But you're still going to hear it from other people, and people are going to repeat these spells, right? So what are the things that we can do to transmute that, sort of maybe have a level of protection of that, so that we really know our vibration within each, whether it's our left leg, or, all of these, if we have a sore belly or whatever, it all connects to different levels, areas of energy points. If you don't want to use the word chakra, if that particular word triggers you for whatever reason. But all of these energy points are, again, these are actually something that are provable by science. This is something that you can actually measure. If you have a magnetic measuring device, this is something that you can use with those particular, I forget the name of the cameras, that you can actually visually see. And when you work on these particular energy points, as Holly's going to get into, that we're no longer vibrating at those levels, that these triggers, spells, are no longer going to work.
Right. So, and my TV is sitting right behind me.
That's okay. I have one too. It's not like we like to enjoy movies, but we pick and choose what we watch. So
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So if somebody is not willing, or it's not their thing to get the deep regression work with the chakra clearing, or energy center clearing, however you want to call it, I really suggest, when you're getting really triggered, to identify the emotion behind the trigger. Mm-hmm. And okay, well, I'll go back to that in a minute. Identify the emotion, and mm-hmm. mad and angry isn't good enough. You have to go below that and really tap in. Is it fear? Is it unworthiness? Is it instability? And then is what I like for people to do is to meditate on the very first time they felt that. And I'm going to give you a hint. It's usually between 1 and 7 or 8 and 15. I've been doing this work for over 10 years using the energy centers or the chakras as a measuring point. I use a pendulum. 80% of the time, it's in your first or second chakra. It is a childhood issue that may not be as drastic as you think it is now that we're all grown up, but it impacted you as a child. It created a distortion in your field as a child, and it's getting re-triggered. Now, sometimes it is a past life, and what I've noticed is when you're really triggered by racism, which you should be. Racism is gross. It's horrible to think that somebody's outer skin makes us more superior or less than or different. It's just.
If I just may interrupt for just 1 second.
Yeah.
One person that I forget who was saying it, but they're like, we forget that the skin is the biggest organ in our body, and we're judging each other on the biggest organ in our body just because it's a different pigment. I just thought that was kind of interesting perspective.
Right. But, so I want to segue. I want to talk a little bit about predictive programming, but is what I've noticed is most people who are really triggered by racism, and that was me as well. We have ancestral wounds that we're carrying forward. So most, in my experience, this is so sensitive right now, like I do not want to trigger anybody, but when I've worked with mostly non-white people, it is ancestral wounding going back many, many generations. That they're carrying these ancestral wounds. And I'm talking about I've worked with people who were in the Spanish Inca whole genocide, Native American genocide. I have worked with people who are carrying this wound all the way up into the present. So you literally need to do a DNA clearing on that when you zoom into the fractal of the DNA that is replicating whatever they experienced at that time. You have to heal the fractal, and you have to bring in that soul piece. So we're not just dealing with like, hey, I'm pissed off because the world's not right. No, this goes back sometimes thousands of years. And the DNA, the junk DNA, the RNA just kept repeating that fractal. And we start reliving that fractal, and the fractal becomes our holographic universe. So, and this goes for the LGBTQ community as well. I have not worked with a lot of people from that community, but 100% of the ones that I have worked with, that they're carrying secrets that their ancestors could not express. Hands down. Again, I have not worked with many, but 100% of the ones that I have worked with are carrying secrets that their ancestors could not express. Wow. So this is very real. And the many people in the Black community, from my experience, only the ones that I have worked with are carrying these really deep ancestral wounds, and rightly so. And okay, so for mine, if I can just segue into the story really quick. And like I said, I've written a workbook. It's in my workbook. When I had my big racial epiphany, I had a flashback to back on the plantation days, and I was a female. I was white. My family was the owners, which sucks. And I had fallen in love with a slave. And I could still see him as clear as day, right? Like the image is in my fractal reality. It's embedded in my DNA. I could see him clear as day. Anyway, I got caught, and my punishment was for me to watch him being whipped to death. And it was the most horrific thing. So every time we had to learn about slavery in school, like I said earlier, like when we had to watch that movie, I would literally get so nauseous that I was going to throw up. And I couldn't figure that out because I grew up, on a farm. There was no logical reason why I would have any attachment to slavery except for just common empathy. But this was like, no, I'm going to get sick and throw up. I can't even go to school. So if people are having this reaction, it is purely ancestral. But how they fuel this, and again, if you go back to the declassified documents from the CIA and you read the declassified documents on consciousness, you're going to see that they know how to create these patterns. So they know you're holding this trigger. They know white people hold the trigger, black people, brown people, red people, yellow people, all the people hold this trigger of trauma. So if they want to start more division, is all they do is flip that card, make that scenario, and boom, because we are, and this is where it goes into predictive programming, we are totally predictive. They know exactly what we're going to do. In fact, recently I found out that the Colorado shooting in that movie theater a couple years ago, that guy, and I didn't even know I was going to talk about this. I should have looked his name up. Yeah. But I have the video. He was a genius, and he was doing predictive programming on video games. And then all of a sudden he shot a bunch of people in a theater. Nope. I don't believe that for a heartbeat. I think they sent in the Men in Black, and I think they took this kid and they're using him on the black government projects. I am like adamant that's what happened. When my friend sent me the video saying, and she just sent this to me like a month ago, and she's like, this was the Colorado shooter. He was a genius. And it got me really looking into predictive programming, and it's like, yep, we are showing them how we're going to react. And all we have to do is channel our reaction somewhere else to throw them off. That's how we're going to get our power back, is to stop reacting. Because the more we react, the more they're going to traumatize us. And the humans, we're under such a huge amount of trauma, and we keep reacting every single time. So they keep giving us more trauma. It's a cycle.
Absolutely. And just back to the that particular shooter, if it's the same person I'm thinking of, this is the one with that was connected to the Batman. Yeah. Yes. I remember watching, I mean, this is a long time ago now, but I remember you were seeing the trial, and this young man seemed like he was drugged. He wasn't able to speak very well. His eyes were looking, not in any one direction. And he literally looked like someone that was on some sedative drug. And when you, of his, I guess it was friends or family members, posted videos of him. He's very articulate. He communicates, very, very well. You can tell that he's very bright. And even some of, other people that were around him were like, this person did very well. He had quite a few friends, etc. So there was all these things that didn't really add up. And just going back to shootings again for a while, where, especially in America and to some extent in Canada, and I'm sure it's the same throughout the world, but they're always blaming the weapon. But when we look at almost every single solitary case going back to the Columbine shooting in '99, that's when I was like finishing up high school, so I remember that quite well. Was almost every single solitary case, either they were just going on SSRIs or coming off of SSRIs, something like Prozac. So that's really telling that these particular, and I'm not saying that in some cases that for a short period of time, they might be useful because you like, it's a point of energy, like, okay, we have to do something immediately. So let's put them on something. So, and then slowly take them off of that particular drug, whatever it is. And then let's maybe like use some sort of nutrition and guidance and so on, so that we can balance out that person's brain. I'm not necessarily against that. But what I'm saying is it's really interesting that pretty much every single solitary case, they were either just put on or just came off that particular those particular drugs in almost every shooting case that's out there. So we should really be looking at mental health as opposed to a tool that can be used to either protect your home, or if you want to go hunting. Like I'm a person that not really for, and you're talking to someone that I'm probably never going to own a gun. I mean, maybe, but at my age now, I'm like, I'm probably not going to own a gun. I don't really care for them, but I know lots of people that do. And I'm also wise enough to know that, because I was in cadets, so I know a little bit about guns and stuff like that, to know that just because it's like having, if you take a particular car and you put a new body on it, but it's the same engine, the same thing, doesn't make that car any more dangerous. It just changes the color, and it changes the look of the car, but it's still the exact same gearbox. It's still the same engine and everything. And I think that a lot of people, they see, an AR-15, and if you look at a dressed down one, just a very basic one, it doesn't look scary, or whatever word you want to use. But then you dress it up, and then people are like, "Oh, it's an assault rifle." It's like, well, no, it's not. It's the same rifle. It's the exact same caliber. It shoots the same rounds. Like,
right, right.
But if you're a gun person, you want it to look cool. Like, I don't get it. If you're a car person, you want your car to look cool. So, I mean, this is the thing that the media always tries to tell you. And here in Canada, I live in a rural area, and guns are, especially if you live on a ranch, a gun's is a necessity. Like, you have to protect your animals. Like, if there's a coyote or a wolf or some other predator out there, like, you got to protect your animal. Like, almost even my grandparents, when I grew up on a farm, I don't think they've ever shot it, but they had one, they had a rifle. So I think people forget that that's like, it's part of the culture. Like, if you live in a rural area, it's maybe not to protect against, someone invading the home, but if you have a few animals, it's like, you don't necessarily have to shoot the coyote, but you shoot a few rounds out into the air. That coyote or cougar or whatever it is going to run away, because So I think people need to remember that. I don't know. That's my little rant about guns.
No, absolutely. I'm going to add to that. When I grew up on a ranch, and when I was in third grade, my parents came up into my room and they're like, "Don't look outside." That's the first thing you do, is look outside. And our golden lab bear had gotten into poison or something. It wasn't on our ranch. It was somewhere else. And he was like convulsing and going into seizures. And the vet was like 45 minutes away. And my dad covered him up with a tarp and he was like foaming at the mouth. And I'm like, well, Dad, shoot him.
Yeah.
Like, put him out of his misery. Shoot him. I have seen horses come down on like steel poles, totally impaled, rivers of blood coming out because they've gashed open their chest. Thank God they were like saved both times. But there are times and places where you want to put an animal out of suffering. So I am not anti-gun. Gun sales in America have gone up like 2.5 million just in the past few months. And the way these groups have been infiltrated, and I literally mean George Soros funded, infiltrated, mind controlled specimens put in to create violence. We want to be armed. And I know for a fact that there's plants or crisis actors put in these groups. I know that for a fact because my mother used to work for the government typing up when a peaceful Vietnam protest was going to turn violent because they're literally putting in plants. My mom would alert the authorities. She's still under a 50-year silencer. So when somebody says crisis actors aren't real, that was my mom's job. Like, they're for real. Like, they're absolutely for real. And everything, like, not everything, but so many things are staged, you know? And so now we're coming into this whole thing where it's like, well, you know, if you want to defund the cops, then we want to arm ourselves. And at this point, I'm like, well, I can't blame you. I cannot blame you.
Yeah.
If you have all these like really hardcore, and I'm not talking liberal, all acceptance. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about peaceful protesters. I am not talking about that. I'm talking about rioters, looters, people of violence. And if you guys want to defund the cops, then what are we supposed to do? Right? But again, moving back to, we're supposed to talk about emotions, not guns.
Who knows where it's going to go?
We digress. It really goes back to healing that emotional and ancestral trauma. And that's what we're not doing. And about the SRIs, like the people, these shooters who are coming off or getting on these antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, that's so many times it's energetic. And if it's physical, it's because there's a mineral deficiency. Yeah. Like, why do you think they put people on lithium? Because they are mineral deficient. Our food is totally depleted. Half of the additives in America are banned elsewhere. You know, they do things to your neurons. They literally do things to your neurons so you're not firing right. And so now I've been having a huge wave of people come in for weight loss for hypnosis. And it's like, man, we're not, it's not about losing weight. It's about getting off the sugar addiction. It's about getting off processed foods, because those are going to affect every organ in your body. You're putting chemicals in your body. So you add that in to like Prozac, Wellbutrin, Trazodone, it totally affects your neurons, your nervous system. And right on the label on some of them, it says will cause suicidal thoughts and depression. Really? Yeah. And if anybody reads my story, I used to, I got to learn to love the fly. If anybody reads my story, I used to be manic depressed. And and really, really depressed and suicidal. And I tried Prozac and Wellbutrin and Trazodone. They didn't work. I could literally feel them like numbing out my frontal lobes. And that's why I do the shamanic work now, because I finally went to a shaman. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't even know what that was. And it really helped. It totally turned my life around by going back and changing the energy within my body, and it changed my immune system. I'm not on anything now. I don't even get sick. Like, there's not one pharmaceutical in my house. There's nothing. And we can all get back. I mean, literally, I was suicidal in my like late high school years, early adulthood. I was a wreck. And we can all move past that with simple lifestyle changes. The changes that I made weren't even that drastic, but I can tell you it was not helped by any allopathic medicine at all. At all. And that's why I do this work, because everybody has the sovereign right to be their own person and not enslaved by the media or the pharmaceuticals or any of this crap. We can all become our own creators as we move through these frequency distortions. And I don't want to say raise our vibration, but maybe change our vibration into something that's more suited for us.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting, like, well, all those things that we're talking about, whether that be, whether that be the genetically modified foods or processed foods and all this stuff, it literally causes us to be stuck in our stomach, right? And that's where our solar plex chakra, or that third center, whatever you want to call it, that's our strength. That's where we're going to be able to, when that is aligned, we're going to be able to stand our own 2 feet, and we're going to be able to slowly express ourselves. And so when all those energy, whether that's the root chakra, the sacral chakra, and the solar plexus, all of that area, when that area is stuck and it's not allowing energy to move up and out, then we're not processing those those emotions. So that's why it's like, it's so simple to this morning, I went for a bike ride, and I have lots of energy now because I was able to move that energy through the physical, right? And I don't always eat like 100% healthy, but I try to. Most of the time I'm eating some, all my foods that I'm eating is whole foods. It comes from, it's, actual vegetable, actual meat. It's not processed in some company and put it together. And I'm not a big sugar person, stuff like that. So all those little things allow us then to, when we're feeling better, then we're able to get into that, if you want to call it that vibration, where if there is a stuck emotion, it's able to move through the body, where the same thing as if your digestion's doing well and your liver's doing well and your spleen's doing well and all the organs are dealing well, then it's able to eliminate in the physical world, it's able to eliminate those toxins. And if you're able to do that in the physical, then it's easier to allow to remove or transmute those if you want to use that term, toxic emotions, and allow them to transmute through the body and just eliminate it, and then make it into this creative energy, right? When it moves up through the body, and then you're able to think better, and you're able to create better. And when you're able to think of something that you want to create, then that of course puts a smile on your face, and then you're laughing, and then that's alchemy.
You nailed that one. You nailed that one. Yes, you totally, Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I kept saying frequency distortion. Yeah, it's all this fear it knocks us right back in. I mean, you just said it. It knocks us right back into our lower survival chakras. Those are the 3 chakras that I clear over and over and over on my clients. And then it's when they come back in and that first chakra is holding steady, it's like, dude, done deal. Like, you are on your way, right? And it usually takes a few times because we're holding so much trauma. It does, like 2 sessions and it's clear, because my sessions are really long. But it's like, man, once that first chakra is holding, it's like, man, you are on your way. And you're right, that is the alchemy. What I didn't answer earlier was talking about that emotion that you want to identify when you're triggered. If you don't want to go to somebody for work or have a session, let that childhood memory come up, and write a letter. Really, we're not going to be politically correct. Write a letter to that person who wronged you, or whatever the situation was. Really get it out. Write it so you have a release with tears. Once you write the paper, paper all over the place here. Once you write the paper, you're going to blow into it 3 times and really release that emotion. Big blows, like really release it, crumple it up, and burn it in a fire-safe dish. And what that does is, in shamanism, fire is cleansing. We're turning this into the light, and it's really powerful. I had some lady come to me with migraines once, and she just had an intake. I didn't even give her the session yet. It was just on the fly. And I'm like, well, go write a letter. We traced her migraines back to an abusive relationship in high school. And 3 weeks later, she comes in for her session and she's like, my migraines are gone and I'm not taking my medication. I wrote that letter. And I was like, what? That letter was that powerful. Mm-hmm. It was that powerful. So it's a huge process. You've got to blow the emotion into the letter. Breath work with the shamanic is super important. But if you're feeling really triggered too, nobody is stopping you from changing your environment. Stop what you're doing, even if you're at work. Just, I need a 10-minute, and you go outside, you get some sun on your head, you change your environment. Just like when a child keeps freaking out over and over, like with homework or whatever the situation is, you stop. You change the environment, you go water the plants, you go on a walk, you do something. And that's going to shift the environment. But it's really important what you said, Chris. We are literally getting knocked back into our survival chakras. And it's like, yep, once we bring that out, our whole world starts to shift. And when you get out of those lower first 3, then you get knocked back. You could feel it. You're like, oh my God, my second chakra, my second energy center is out. And you can go back in and kind of self-reflect and meditate through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's definitely, this is definitely something that we can do on a daily practice of, whether that's meditation or if you want to call that prayer, or just mindfulness. Doesn't matter what you call it. It's your own personal thing. And then, if you want to call that a chakra system, or if you want to call that an energy system, that's all the same, all the same thing. And as if you move through each different center within your body, then you're gonna move that. And like, again, going back to words and terms, this is like where I like to play. It's fun. And this is how we remember. It's like, emotions are in motion, right? And if your emotions aren't able to if they're stuck, and then it has to channel. And it's all, again, it's all connected to breath or to water, and allowing that energy to flow, right? And it's electric and all those things. And there are metaphors, but there's there's so much truth to that, because it doesn't matter if you go back to if you go to the cell, or if you go to the atom, or to the quantum level, there's energy always moving. And I think it's really important for us to just take that breath and think about that for just a second. I posted this thing, earlier this week, of Bruce Lipton just talking about the cells, and there's 50 trillion cells, and and that creates that metamorphosis of what makes up the human being. And we forget that we're a community of cells, and then we go in deeper, even deeper than those cells are made up of atoms, and it's made up of quarks and all these different things, and then it's just pure energy, which is quantum physics. So we have to keep thinking in these ways, and then we get into that level of like, well, we're made up of mostly water, so yeah, we have to keep that currency flowing, so that we understand that or understanding. I would, given that word, I was like, really like that term, understanding instead of understanding. And when we have that understanding, then we realize that we're that sovereign being, and that's where we can really stand still and allow that energy to transmute and to flow into that creativeness.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fly. Sorry, I just had a thought go through my head, and then the fly. If I had a gun, I'd shoot it. No. But I probably missed and hit my TV.
There you go. Get rid of that TV.
But no, it's so true. We are made out of water, and for people who aren't in, who want the more science-based stuff, Bruce Lipton's amazing. He's really, really an amazing man to listen to, and it's what I found out. That's what I wanted. That's the thought that went through my head. Is I've been dealing with a lot of clients lately who are feeling really out of control right now. That's a big one. So when you're feeling out of control, and I turned on the regular news the other day, and I just was like, wow, man, this is insane. I told my son, I said, man, let's sit down and watch what the masses are watching, right? And I have this weird little box that Comcast gave me, and I found live news, and we just sat there and watched, and I was like, man, I don't feel so good after this. And he's like, me neither. I'm like, that was a cool experiment, huh? I'm like, that's what your friend's parents watch. That's why he's got one friend who still can't get out of the house till there's a vaccine, where they're going to shoot you up with a new genome.
Yeah.
What is going on, right? But so I've noticed a lot of people are really feeling out of control, and you turn on the black box or the black mirror, and you're out of control. There's so much programming of grief, fear, violence coming out of there that there's no way you could feel in control. Mm-hmm. So turn it off, turn on Bruce Lipton, do your meditation. I like to pull in Diamond Light. It's like a rotor-rooter for the chakras or the energy centers. It just like pounds out that dense energy. We have the ability to take our control back. We have the ability to take our power back and unify and take the high road over this division. That's the only way. That's the only way we're going to create that unity. We're literally going through the shift right now. Like, it is literally 2012. I've heard from multiple sources, our calendar's off. We are in 2012. So we literally have the ability, like you said, Chris, to create, to channel this energy up into creation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're going to leave that right at that. I think that sums it up really well. Thanks so much, Holly. How can we support you? Where can people reach you? Et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, really quick.
Yep,
If anybody, in the United States wants to come to a retreat, I'm doing a retreat up at ECETI Ranch over, I think it's like August 6th through August 10th at ECETI Ranch with Marie Thorne Thompson. It's going to be yoga and shamanic. We roped in James Gilliland. He's going to do Qigong and do his 8-8 Lionsgate meditation. So that's on the ECETI website, eceti.org. I can be reached at hollymariecoaching.com. And I do 20-minute free consultations. If anyone just wants to work through a piece really quick, I'm happy to do that, because we all deserve to really thrive right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Time to thrive. Okay. Thanks, Holly. And is there anything else that we might have forgot about that you're like, I need to talk about this, or it's important?
The vaccines. We didn't get to talk about the vaccines. I encourage everybody to do their own research on the vaccine coming out. I have a really good friend who was a nurse at Stanford who does vaccinate her children, and she believes in vaccines, and she's like, there's no way in hell I'm getting this COVID vaccine. There's no way. So if she's saying it, there's something to be heard. So everybody do their research, and I think that's it. I mean, we could go on and on, but I'm really grateful to be back a second time, Chris, really.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Okay, well, thanks so much, guys, for listening. If you're on YouTube, please thumbs up, subscribe, and check out Holly Marie. She's on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, etc. So you can reach her there. So sometimes, yeah, well, she's available. So check out her work, support her, and through this we're going to get through this process together. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.